Chapter 4, Quiet Days for Now. Arriving in South Korea was not the end of the journey. If anything, it felt like the beginning of a much longer road. In the first days after their arrival, Nora and her siblings were transferred to a support center for survivors of wars and disasters. The place was not luxurious, but it was clean, quiet, and organized in a way Nora had not experienced for years. White buildings, wide hallways, and the calm faces of the staff, everything felt different from the world she had known in the streets. But Nora did not allow herself to relax. She watched everything. Always. After about 2 weeks of medical procedures and psychological evaluations, they were given a small apartment through an aid program. The apartment was in a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. It was not large, 2 small rooms, a simple kitchen, and a narrow living area overlooking a tree-lined street. But to them, it felt like a palace. On their first day inside the apartment, Adam stepped in slowly, looking around as if he feared the place might disappear if he touched the walls. He said nothing. He simply sat on the floor near the window. Layan, still far too young to fully understand everything that had happened in their lives, began walking around the small room laughing, touching the walls, exploring every corner as if it were a brand new world. Nora stood at the doorway for a moment. She looked inside. Then she closed the door behind them. For the first time in years, there was a door she could close. A door separating them from the world. In the days that followed, their lives began to take on a simple rhythm, waking up early, preparing a small breakfast, then heading to the medical center. Psychological sessions were a central part of the program. Adam often sat in silence during the sessions, sometimes answering with short words and other times simply nodding his head. The therapists did not pressure him. They understood that children who had been through what he had needed more time than most people expected. Layan, however, was different. She did not carry clear memories of the war or the explosion. Her laughter sometimes filled the room during sessions, to the point that some nurses would pause for a moment just to listen. Her presence lightened the atmosphere, but Nora knew the truth. Layan had not seen hell. Adam had, and Nora was responsible for everything. Psychological therapy, physical treatment, medical appointments, official paperwork, and money. Money was a constant problem. The aid they received was enough for basic living, but Nora saved as much as she possibly could. She only bought what was necessary: food, medicine, a few simple clothes for the children. The rest she kept in a small envelope inside the kitchen cabinet. She told no one why. The real reason she had come to Korea was not only to escape or rebuild their lives. It was treatment. South Korea was globally known for its cosmetic and reconstructive surgeries. Adam's burns, Nora's burns, both would require years of treatment, but Nora had made her decision from the very beginning. Adam first. At every hospital visit, she focused more on his burns than anything else. Doctors examined the damaged skin, explaining the stages of treatment and the possible surgeries in the future. Adam listened quietly. Sometimes he would grip the sleeve of his shirt tightly when the doctor mentioned the word surgery. At those moments, Nora would place her hand on his shoulder. Her calmness was always the answer. As for her own burns, they were not a priority. The scars stretching across her shoulder and along the side of her body were visible, but she barely mentioned them during medical sessions. The only thing she focused on for herself was her arm, the arm that was no longer there. Losing her right hand was not just an injury. It was an obstacle in everything. Cooking, carrying things, opening heavy doors, even tying Layan's hair sometimes. The doctors told her that getting a prosthetic hand was possible, but the process would take time, measurements, training sessions, physical rehabilitation, so it was delayed, and that did not bother her much. She had already learned to live without it, but she knew that having one would make life a little easier. In the evenings, after their medical appointments ended, they would return to the small apartment. Adam usually sat near the window, watching the street, children riding bicycles, people returning home from work, a normal life he had not known for years. Layan played on the floor with simple toys they had received from the center, and Nora, she stood in the kitchen, cooking, washing dishes, tidying the room, watching her siblings without them noticing. She was quiet, but her mind was not. Every day she thought about the future, treatment, money, the school Adam would eventually attend, the surgeries their burns would require. She knew the road ahead was long, very long, but she was not afraid. They had already survived the worst. One night, after Adam and Layan had fallen asleep, Nora sat near the window. The city was lit with endless lights. Cars passed along the street. People walked without fear, a normal life. She placed her left hand on the edge of the window and looked at the empty space where her right hand once was. She did not feel sadness, only silence. The silence she had grown used to long ago, but within that silence there was something new, something very small. Hope, fragile but real. And even though the road ahead of them was long and their wounds had not yet healed, Nora knew only one thing. This was not the end. It was merely a slow beginning to a life they had never known before.